Marcus Chun wiped the sweat from his forehead with a grease-stained rag, leaving another dark smudge across his already dirty face. The massive alien hulk stretched before him like a metallic mountain, its twisted corridors and shattered bulkheads telling the story of a battle that had ended centuries ago. Most salvagers would have stripped this wreck clean of valuable components and moved on, but Marcus saw something different. Where others saw scrap metal, he saw the bones of a legend. The Kethvar Dreadnought Void Sovereign had been the flagship of the most feared alien empire in known space. 300 meters of pure destruction, armed with quantum cannons that could crack planets, and shields that had turned entire fleets into cosmic dust. Now it drifted in the graveyard orbit of Kepler 442, one of thousands of wrecks left behind after the Great Convergence War. The battle that ended here had been humanity's first real test against alien technology, and they had barely survived. Marcus ran his calloused hand along the hull plating, feeling the subtle vibrations that spoke of systems still alive deep within the ship's core. Most people couldn't hear it, but Marcus had spent 30 years working on everything from ancient Earth destroyers to captured alien fighters. He knew the language of machines, and this one was singing to him. "Computer, begin structural analysis," Marcus called out to his AI assistant. "Warning, this vessel exceeds recommended salvage parameters by 400%. Alien technology presents unknown hazards. Recommend immediate withdrawal." The synthetic voice replied with its usual caution. "Since when do I listen to recommendations?" Marcus grunted, pulling his plasma cutter from his tool belt. "Begin recording." Personal log, Day 1 of Project Resurrection. The first cut into the hull sent sparks flying in the zero-gravity environment. Marcus had learned long ago that alien metallurgy was different from human engineering. Where humans built things to be repaired and replaced, the Kethvar built things to last forever. Their hull plates were grown rather than forged, creating molecular structures that could self-repair minor damage and adapt to different stress patterns. As he worked his way through the outer armor, Marcus found himself impressed despite everything he knew about Kethvar cruelty. Their ships were works of art as much as weapons of war. Every curve served a purpose, every angle calculated for maximum efficiency. The humans had won the war through numbers and desperation, but the Kethvar had nearly won it through pure technological superiority. The breach seal hissed as atmosphere equalized between his small salvage craft and the alien interior. Emergency lighting flickered to life automatically, casting strange purple shadows along corridors designed for beings nearly twice human height. Marcus activated his suit's translation matrix and stepped inside. The first thing that hit him was the smell. Even through his environmental systems, he could detect the ozone scent of advanced electronics and something else, something organic. The Kethvar had used biomechanical integration in ways humanity was only beginning to understand. Their ships weren't just machines. They were living entities in their own right. "Computer, detect any active life signs," Marcus commanded. Negative for complex biological signatures. However, detecting multiple low-level bioelectrical patterns consistent with ship's organic components in dormant state. Marcus nodded. He had expected as much. Kethvar ships were designed to enter hibernation when critically damaged, preserving their core systems until repairs could be made. The problem was that no repairs had come for 3 centuries, and most salvagers assumed the ships were completely dead. The main corridor stretched ahead like a cathedral, its walls lined with what looked like veins of living metal. Marcus touched one experimentally and felt it pulse faintly under his fingertips. Definitely alive, or at least something close to it. He followed the corridor toward the ship's heart, where the primary power core would be located. The Kethvar had called their power sources star hearts, contained singularities that provided virtually unlimited energy. Human scientists had tried for decades to reverse engineer the technology, but the few intact cores they had captured had self-destructed rather than reveal their secrets. Marcus was hoping this one might be different. As he walked deeper into the ship, He began to notice details that other salvagers had missed. The damage patterns were wrong. This ship hadn't been destroyed in the final battle. It had been sabotaged. Blast marks on the internal bulkheads showed signs of weapons fire from inside the ship, not outside. Someone or something had turned the Void Sovereign's own weapons against its crew. Interesting, Marcus muttered, recording everything with his suit's cameras. Computer, cross-reference damage patterns with known Kethvar weapon signatures. Analysis confirms. Internal damage consistent with Kethvar pulse rifles and thermal charges. Estimated time of internal conflict. Approximately 30 minutes before ship's final power down. A mutiny then? Or maybe something worse. The Kethvar were known for their rigid hierarchy and absolute loyalty to their war speakers. For the crew to turn on each other suggested something had gone very wrong indeed. Marcus found the first bodies in what appeared to be a weapons locker. 2 Kethvar warriors, their insectoid exoskeletons cracked and blackened by energy weapons. They had died fighting each other, their 4-armed bodies locked in eternal combat. Marcus studied them carefully, trying to piece together what had happened. The Kethvar were natural warriors, bred for combat over millions of years of evolution on a hostile world. They respected strength above all else and viewed other species as either useful servants or obstacles to be eliminated. The fact that they had turned their weapons on each other suggested something had driven them beyond their normal behavioral patterns. Computer, scan for any unusual radiation signatures or chemical residues. Detecting trace amounts of an unknown compound in the ship's atmosphere. Molecular structure does not match any known Kethvar technology. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Unknown compounds on a Kethvar warship could mean only one thing. They had encountered something even they feared. The Great Convergence War had officially been fought between humanity and the Kethvar Empire, but rumors had always persisted of a third party, something that had pushed both species into conflict. He pressed on toward the ship's core, following the main arterial corridor. The biomechanical components became more pronounced as he moved deeper, with pulsing tubes and neural link interfaces covering every surface. This was the ship's nervous system, the network that allowed the Kethvar to interface directly with their vessels through biological implants. The command bridge was a masterpiece of alien engineering. Curved walls covered in organic displays that still flickered with residual power, control stations designed for beings with 4 arms and compound eyes. At the center sat the War Speaker's throne, a massive construct that would have allowed the ship's commander to merge his consciousness with the vessel itself. Marcus approached the throne carefully. Kethvar command systems were notoriously protective of their secrets, and he had heard stories of salvagers being electrocuted or worse when they tried to access them. But as he drew closer, something unexpected happened. The throne began to glow. Soft blue light emanated from neural interface points built into the chair's surface. The ship's biomechanical systems were responding to his presence, recognizing him as a potential operator. This should have been impossible. Kethvar technology was genetically locked to their species, designed to reject any other form of life. Warning: alien neural interface attempting to establish connection. Recommend immediate withdrawal, his AI announced with increased urgency. Marcus paused, his hand hovering over the primary interface. Every instinct screamed at him to back away, to play it safe like he always had. But something about this ship called to him. The Void Sovereign wanted to live again, and somehow it recognized him as the one who could make that happen. Computer, monitor my vital signs. If anything goes wrong, initiate emergency extraction, Marcus said, settling himself into the massive throne. The neural interfaces found the access ports built into his salvage suit and made contact. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the universe exploded into light and sensation as the ship's consciousness touched his own. Marcus found himself floating in a vast digital space, surrounded by the flowing data streams that represented the Void Sovereign's memory core. He could feel the ship's pain, the agony of centuries spent dying slowly in the void. But underneath that pain was something else, hope. The ship had been waiting for someone who could understand it, someone who could see past its alien nature to the spirit of the machine itself. Images flashed through his mind. The ship's construction in the great orbital forges above Kethvar Prime. Its first battle, the taste of victory as it shattered human defenses. The pride of its crew, the fierce joy of the hunt. And then the horror of its final mission, the thing they had found drifting in the space between stars. Marcus saw it through the ship's sensors, a vessel of impossible geometry, its hull covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. The moment the Void Sovereign had detected it, madness had begun to spread through the crew. The unknown compound his AI had detected wasn't a chemical weapon. It was the ship's attempt to purge an infection of pure insanity from its biological components. The Kethvar crew had turned on each other not out of rebellion, but because they had seen something that broke their minds. The ship itself had been forced to choose between saving its crew and saving itself. It had chosen survival, sealing away the infected sections and going into hibernation to wait for a mind that could resist the corruption. Why me? Marcus asked the ship's consciousness. The answer came not in words, but in understanding. Humans were different from the Kethvar. Where the alien species sought perfection and absolute order, humans thrived on chaos and adaptation. The very qualities that made humanity seem primitive to the Kethvar. Their stubbornness, their refusal to accept limitations, their ability to find solutions where none should exist, made them immune to the kind of mental corruption that had destroyed the Void Sovereign's crew. Marcus felt the ship's systems coming online around him, responding to his thoughts and intentions. Power flowed through conduits that had been dark for centuries. Gravitational generators hummed to life, creating the stable artificial gravity field that Kethvar physiology required. Most importantly, the star heart at the ship's core began to pulse with renewed energy. "We can do this together," Marcus whispered to the ship's consciousness. "You want to live, and I want to prove that humans can rebuild anything, even gods." The connection deepened, and Marcus found himself accessing the ship's technical databases. Schematics flooded his mind. Weapons systems beyond human understanding, shield generators that could turn aside stellar radiation, engines capable of crossing the galaxy in months rather than years. The Void Sovereign wasn't just a warship. It was a mobile fortress capable of taking on entire fleets. But it was also broken. 3 centuries of neglect had taken their toll on even Kethvar engineering. Hull breaches needed to be sealed, biomechanical components required nutrients and stimulation to remain healthy, and the quantum processing cores that managed the ship's higher functions had developed cascade failures that would take months to repair. Marcus pulled back from the neural interface, his head spinning from the data download. The throne's glow faded, but he could still feel the ship's presence in the back of his mind, a vast, alien intelligence that had chosen to trust him with its resurrection. "Computer, status report," he called out to his AI. Neural interface contact maintained for 17 minutes, 43 seconds. No signs of mental contamination or neurological damage detected. However, subject's brain activity shows unusual patterns consistent with expanded cognitive capacity. Marcus grinned. The ship had shared some of its processing power with him, augmenting his human intelligence with alien computational abilities. He could feel it working. Complex engineering problems that would have taken him days to solve now seemed straightforward. The Void Sovereign wasn't just letting him repair it. It was teaching him how to think like a Kethvar engineer. He stood up from the throne and looked around the command bridge with new understanding. Every system, every component had a purpose in the ship's greater design. The biomechanical integration wasn't just advanced technology, it was a form of artificial evolution, allowing the ship to adapt and improve itself over time. "All right, beautiful," Marcus said, patting the nearest console affectionately. "Let's see what we're working with." The ship responded by bringing up holographic displays throughout the bridge. Damage reports scrolled past in Kethvar script that Marcus could now somehow read. Hull integrity was at 63%. Primary weapon systems were offline, but could be repaired. The Starheart was stable, but operating at only 12% capacity due to quantum containment field fluctuations. Most concerning were the biological components. The ship's organic neural networks were slowly dying without proper care, like a plant left too long without water. If Marcus didn't act quickly, the Void Sovereign would lose the very qualities that made it superior to purely mechanical vessels. Marcus spent the next several hours cataloging the ship's condition room by room. His small salvage craft was equipped with basic fabrication equipment and a modest supply of rare materials, but restoring a Kethvar dreadnought would require resources he didn't have. The biomechanical components alone would need specialized nutrients that could only be synthesized from alien organic compounds. But as he worked, Marcus began to see possibilities that other humans would have missed. The ship's adaptive systems could be modified to accept human-compatible materials. Its biomechanical neural networks could be supplemented with synthetic components based on human brain architecture. The Void Sovereign didn't have to be restored exactly as it was. It could be rebuilt as something new, a hybrid of alien engineering and human innovation. Computer, establish communication link with the Kepler Station orbital facility. Marcus commanded. Communication established. You have 17 pending messages from Station Administrator Rodriguez regarding overdue salvage permits. Marcus ignored the bureaucratic complaints and opened a priority channel. This is independent salvager Marcus Chun requesting immediate audience with Chief Engineer Sarah Kim. Tell her I found something that's going to change everything. The response came back within minutes. Sarah Kim's weathered face appeared on his suit's display, her expression skeptical. She had been Marcus's mentor during his early years on Kepler Station, teaching him everything she knew about alien technology before he struck out on his own. Marcus, please tell me you haven't found another Kethvar toilet that you think is a quantum computer, Sarah said with weary amusement. Better than that, Sarah. I found a fully intact Kethvar dreadnought with an active Starheart and functioning biomechanical systems. And I think I can rebuild it. Sarah's expression changed instantly from amusement to alarm. Marcus, you need to back away from that thing right now. Intact Kethvar warships are classified as extreme hazards. The radiation alone from an active Starheart could kill you in minutes. The ship is protecting me, Marcus replied, knowing how insane it sounded. Its biomechanical systems have accepted me as a compatible operator. Sarah, this is the find of a lifetime. With your help, we could have humanity's first God-tier warship. And why exactly would humanity need a God-tier warship? Sarah asked, though Marcus could see the curiosity fighting with caution in her eyes. Marcus paused, remembering the images the ship had shared with him. The vessel of impossible geometry, the thing that had driven the Kethvar crew to madness. Somewhere out in the dark between the stars, it was still drifting, still waiting. Because, Marcus said quietly, I don't think the war is really over. 6 weeks had passed since Marcus first made contact with the Void Sovereign, and the derelict ship now hummed with activity. Sarah Kim had arrived with a small team of engineers and enough supplies to begin serious restoration work. The orbital graveyard around Kepler 442 had been declared a restricted zone by Earth Command, but that hadn't stopped curious salvagers from trying to get close enough for long-range scans. Marcus stood in the ship's primary engineering bay, watching as human-built fabrication units worked alongside alien biomechanical systems to repair damaged hull sections. The integration shouldn't have been possible, but the Void Sovereign had proven remarkably adaptable. Its organic components seemed to learn from human technology, incorporating design elements that improved efficiency while maintaining their alien characteristics. Hull integrity now at 81%, reported Dr. Elena Vasquez, the xenobiologist Sarah had brought to study the ship's living systems. The biomechanical repair organisms are exceeding all expectations. They're not just fixing damage, they're optimizing the repairs to handle human operational requirements. Marcus nodded, running his hand along a freshly grown section of hull plating. The surface felt warm under his palm, pulsing gently with the rhythm of the ship's artificial circulatory system. Over the weeks of working together, he had developed an almost supernatural connection with the vessel. He could sense its moods, feel its needs, and somehow understand its complex systems in ways that defied explanation. The quantum processing cores are responding well to the synthetic neural interfaces, added Chief Petty Officer James Torres, a systems specialist who had initially been skeptical of the entire project. We're seeing a 40% improvement in computational efficiency across all primary systems. Sarah Kim emerged from behind a massive conduit bank, her uniform stained with a mixture of human lubricants and alien biofluid. "The main engines are coming along nicely," she announced. "The gravitational manipulation systems are beyond anything in human technology, but the control interfaces are surprisingly intuitive once you understand the basic principles." Marcus felt a surge of pride from the ship's consciousness, which had been observing all of their work with what he could only describe as parental satisfaction. The Void Sovereign was enjoying the attention, the careful restoration of systems that had been dormant for centuries. But underneath its contentment, Marcus sensed a growing urgency, a need to be complete and functional again. "How long before she's ready for field trials?" Marcus asked. "At our current rate, another month for basic systems," Sarah replied. "But, Marcus, we need to talk about what happens after that. Earth Command is getting nervous about an independent salvager possessing a fully armed Kethvar dreadnought." Marcus had been expecting this conversation. Word of their project had leaked despite the security restrictions, and political pressure was mounting for the ship to be turned over to military control. The problem was that the Void Sovereign had made its preferences clear through their neural link. It would accept Marcus as its commander, but it would resist any attempt to transfer control to someone else. "They can't take her away from me," Marcus said, his voice carrying more emotion than he intended. "She's chosen me. The biomechanical systems won't respond to anyone else the way they respond to me." "That's exactly what worries them," Sarah replied gently. "Marcus, you're talking about this ship like it's alive. Some people think it's having an unhealthy influence on your judgment." Before Marcus could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The Void Sovereign's consciousness touched his mind with urgent warning signals. Something was approaching the orbital graveyard, something that didn't belong there. "Computer, identify the source of the alert," Marcus called out. "Long-range sensors detect unknown vessel approaching at high velocity. Configuration does not match any ship in human or Kethvar databases. Estimated time to intercept, 14 minutes. Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. Through the ship's sensors, he could see the approaching craft on the main display. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, its hull curved in impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. The same type of vessel that had driven the Void Sovereign's original crew to madness. "Sarah, get everyone off the ship now," Marcus ordered, his voice sharp with command authority he didn't know he possessed. "What? Why? What's out there?" "Something that shouldn't exist," Marcus replied, already moving toward the command bridge. "The ship showed me records of its final mission. This is what destroyed the original crew." Sarah grabbed his arm as he passed. "Then, we're all leaving together. I'm not abandoning you to face some alien nightmare alone." Marcus paused, feeling the ship's systems responding to his emotional state. The Void Sovereign was powering up defensive systems, charging weapons that hadn't fired in 3 centuries. Its biomechanical components were flooding with adrenaline-equivalent compounds, preparing for battle. "I can't leave," Marcus said quietly. "The ship needs me to interface with it. Without a neural connection, it's just a collection of advanced technology. With me, it's something more." Through the ship's sensors, Marcus could see the approaching vessel more clearly now. Its hull was covered in symbols that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. The very sight of it triggered primitive fear responses in his brain, as if evolution itself was warning him to run. But the Void Sovereign's consciousness wrapped around his mind like protective armor. The ship had faced this horror before and survived. Together, they could do it again. If you're staying, we're all staying, Sarah declared. James, Elena, get to the secondary engineering stations. If Marcus is going to fight this thing, we're going to make sure he has every system running perfectly. Marcus felt a wave of gratitude toward his team, but also terror for their safety. The original Kethvar crew was driven insane just by looking at this ship. How do you know we won't suffer the same fate? Because we're not Kethvar, Elena replied, her scientific mind already analyzing the problem. You said the ship's consciousness protected you during the neural interface. Maybe human psychology is naturally resistant to whatever drove them mad. Marcus hoped she was right as he settled into the command throne. The neural interface is activated immediately, flooding his awareness with the ship's sensor data. The approaching vessel was even worse when viewed through alien perception systems. Reality seemed to bend around it, creating visual distortions that challenged the laws of physics. Void sovereign to unknown vessel. Marcus broadcast on all frequencies. Identify yourself and state your intentions. The response came not as words, but as raw information transmitted directly into his brain through the neural link. Images of cosmic emptiness, of civilizations reduced to madness and chaos, of ships like the Void Sovereign turning their weapons on themselves in desperate attempts to escape an unbearable truth. Marcus fought back against the mental assault, using every technique Sarah had taught him for dealing with information overload. The ship's consciousness helped, filtering the worst of the psychic noise and providing stability for his human mind to anchor itself against. Warning, unknown vessel is charging what appears to be a directed energy weapon, announced the ship's tactical systems. Configuration unknown, but energy output suggests planet-killing capability. Marcus felt the Void Sovereign's combat instincts merge with his own. Weapons that had been offline for centuries suddenly hummed with deadly power. Shield generators that could turn aside stellar radiation snapped into full defensive configuration. The ship's biomechanical systems flooded with combat stimulants, pushing every component to peak performance. Sarah, are the main engines online? Marcus called out, his voice now carrying the harmonic overtones that indicated deep neural interface integration. Gravitational drives are responding, but we haven't tested them at full power, Sarah replied from her engineering station. No time like the present. Elena, I need you to monitor my vital signs. If the alien influence starts affecting my brain chemistry, you have authorization to forcibly disconnect the neural link. The unknown vessel fired first, sending a beam of what looked like crystallized darkness toward the Void Sovereign. Marcus felt the ship's terror as it recognized the weapon. Not just a physical attack, but something that could unravel the fundamental forces holding matter together. He threw the ship into evasive maneuvers, pushing the gravitational drives beyond their safety limits. The Void Sovereign twisted through space in patterns that would have crushed a purely mechanical vessel, but its biomechanical systems adapted in real time to the stress. The dark beam missed by mere meters, but its passage left a trail of distorted space-time that made Marcus's eyes water to look at. Whatever technology the alien vessel was using, it operated on principles that violated everything he thought he knew about physics. Quantum cannons charging, the ship announced through his neural link. Target locked. Marcus hesitated. The original Kethvar crew had tried to fight this thing, and they had been driven mad in the process. But they had been thinking like Kethvar, precise, orderly, seeking perfect solutions to complex problems. Marcus was human, and humans specialized in messy, imperfect solutions that somehow worked anyway. Instead of targeting the alien vessel directly, Marcus aimed for the space around it. The Void Sovereign's quantum cannons fired, tearing holes in the fabric of reality itself. The shots missed the target, but that was the point. The gravitational distortions created by the weapon's fire began to interfere with whatever exotic physics kept the alien ship stable. The enemy vessel's perfect geometry began to fluctuate, its impossible curves becoming slightly more possible, slightly more real. And as it became more real, it became more vulnerable. Now, Marcus shouted, pouring all of the ship's power into the main weapon array. The Void Sovereign's primary guns fired in perfect synchronization, sending streams of coherent energy toward the now-destabilized alien vessel. The shots connected, and for a moment the impossible ship flickered like a bad holographic projection. Then it simply vanished, leaving behind only the taste of copper and the lingering scent of burnt ozone. Marcus slumped back in the command throne, his connection to the ship's consciousness fading to manageable levels. Around him, his team was running damage assessments and checking systems for any signs of exotic radiation exposure. Sensors show no trace of the alien vessel, James reported. It's like it was never there. Oh, it was there, Marcus replied, feeling the Void Sovereign's exhausted satisfaction through their neural link. But I don't think it was entirely real. Not in the way we understand reality. Elena was studying her readings with intense focus. Marcus, your brain activity during the encounter showed patterns I've never seen before. It was like you were thinking with both human and alien neural structures simultaneously. That's probably exactly what was happening, Marcus admitted. The ship and I aren't just interfacing anymore. We're becoming something new, something that combines human adaptability with Kethvar engineering excellence. Sarah looked up from her damage control station. Are you saying you're becoming part alien? No, Marcus replied, standing up from the throne with newfound confidence. I'm saying the ship is becoming part human. And together, we're becoming something that can stand against threats like that. Through the ship's sensors, Marcus gazed out at the graveyard of dead vessels surrounding them. Each wreck represented a story of conflict and loss of civilizations that had fought and died in the endless cycle of galactic warfare. But now there was something new in that graveyard, a ship that had been reborn through the union of two species' greatest strengths. Computer, begin long-range scanning for additional threats, Marcus commanded. If there's one of those things out there, there might be others. Beginning deep space surveillance pattern. The ship responded, its voice now carrying subtle harmonics that suggested personality rather than mere programming. Marcus felt the Void Sovereign's consciousness settling into a watchful state, ready to defend against threats that conventional military forces couldn't even perceive. They had won this encounter, but he suspected it was only the beginning. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, ancient horrors were stirring, drawn by the scent of advancing civilizations. But now those civilizations had a guardian that understood both the value of human ingenuity and the power of alien technology. The Void Sovereign was no longer just a Kethvar warship or a human salvage project. It was something entirely new, a hybrid vessel crewed by a hybrid consciousness that could face the impossible and find a way to win. Sarah, Marcus said, turning to his mentor with a smile that held more confidence than he had ever felt before. I think it's time we stop worrying about Earth Command concerns and started planning for what comes next. And what exactly comes next? Sarah asked. Marcus felt the ship's agreement resonate through their neural link as he spoke. We hunt down every one of those things before they can threaten another world. And we show the galaxy that humanity doesn't just survive, we excel. The Earth Command facility on Luna hummed with nervous tension as Admiral Rebecca Hayes reviewed the classified reports spread across her holographic display. 3 months had passed since the incident at Kepler 442, and the implications were still sending shockwaves through the highest levels of human government. A civilian salvager had not only successfully restored an alien dreadnought, but had used it to defeat an unknown threat that conventional forces couldn't even comprehend. Sir, the Chun file contains some disturbing psychological evaluations, reported Commander Lisa Park, Hayes' intelligence liaison. Dr. Martinez believes the subject may be suffering from dissociative identity disorder caused by prolonged exposure to alien neural interfaces. Admiral Hayes studied the brain scans with growing concern. Marcus Chin's neural activity showed patterns that were definitely not baseline human, with entire sections of his brain exhibiting Kethvar-like processing structures. Yet every cognitive test showed him to be not only sane, but operating at genius-level intellectual capacity. What does Chen himself say about these changes? Hayes asked. He claims they're beneficial adaptations that allow him to interface more effectively with the ship systems, Commander Park replied. He shows no distress about the modifications and seems unaware of how dramatic they've become. Hayes closed the file with a gesture of frustration. The military wanted to seize the Void Sovereign and place it under proper command authority, but every simulation suggested the ship would simply shut down rather than accept a new operator. Worse, Chen's small team had used the past months to make additional modifications that pushed the vessel's capabilities beyond anything in the current fleet. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Void Sovereign, Marcus was deep in neural communion with the ship's consciousness. The biomechanical interface had evolved far beyond its original Kethvar specifications, creating new pathways that allowed for unprecedented integration between human thought patterns and alien computational systems. Through the ship's enhanced sensors, Marcus could perceive space-time distortions invisible to conventional detection methods. The alien vessels that had attacked them weren't random encounters. They were scouts for something much larger, something that existed partially outside normal reality. Marcus, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command, Sarah announced from the communication station. Admiral Hayes wants to speak with you directly. Marcus opened his eyes, the neural interface automatically shifting to standby mode. Over the months of working together, the boundary between his consciousness and the ships had become increasingly fluid. He was still undeniably human, but he was also something more, a hybrid intelligence that could think in ways neither species had achieved alone. Put her through, Marcus replied, settling more comfortably into the command throne that had become as familiar as his own skin. Admiral Hayes appeared on the main screen, her expression carefully neutral despite the obvious tension in her posture. Mr. Chun, I hope you're prepared to explain why you've been conducting unauthorized combat operations in violation of about 15 different Earth Command regulations. With respect, Admiral, those regulations don't account for threats that exist outside normal space-time, Marcus replied calmly. The entities we've been tracking don't follow conventional physics. Standard military doctrine is worse than useless against them. Nevertheless, you're operating a weapon of mass destruction without proper oversight. I'm ordering you to return to Earth immediately and transfer command of your vessel to qualified military personnel. Marcus felt the Void Sovereign's consciousness stir with what could only be described as amusement. The ship had no intention of accepting any operator other than the one it chosen, and it had ways of making that preference known. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Admiral, Marcus said. The ship has bonded with me on a biological level. Attempting to transfer command could trigger a defensive response that would be dangerous for everyone involved. Hayes leaned forward in her chair. Are you threatening me, Mr. Chun? I'm stating facts about alien technology that your people don't understand, Marcus replied. The Void Sovereign isn't just a ship anymore. It's a living entity with its own survival instincts. It will protect itself if it feels threatened. Before Admiral Hayes could respond, alerts began sounding throughout the ship. Marcus's consciousness merged instantly with the tactical systems, his perception expanding to encompass the entire star system. 3 new contacts had just emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, and their energy signatures matched the alien scouts they had encountered before. Admiral, we have incoming hostiles, Marcus announced, his voice taking on the harmonic overtones of deep neural interface. 3 unknown vessels, same configuration as the threat we eliminated at Kepler, 442. Hayes' expression shifted from bureaucratic annoyance to military alertness. I'm dispatching the 3rd Fleet to intercept. Estimated time of arrival, 47 minutes. They won't make it in time, Marcus replied, already powering up the ship's primary systems. And conventional weapons won't be effective against these targets anyway. Through the ship's enhanced sensors, Marcus could see the alien vessels moving through space in impossible ways, their hulls seeming to exist in several dimensions simultaneously. They were heading directly for Earth, and their intent was clearly hostile. "Sarah, take us to full combat readiness," Marcus ordered. "Elena, I need you to monitor the biomechanical systems for any signs of stress. We're going to push everything beyond design limits." The Void Sovereign responded to Marcus's commands like a living extension of his will. Quantum drives that had been designed for Kethvar physiology adapted to human operational requirements, pushing the ship toward velocities that made conventional faster-than-light travel look primitive. As they accelerated toward the alien vessels, Marcus felt the ship's consciousness preparing for battle. The biomechanical systems were flooding with combat stimulants, optimizing every component for maximum performance. Weapons that had been dormant for centuries hummed with deadly energy, their targeting systems linked directly to Marcus's enhanced neural patterns. "Marcus, your brain activity is approaching dangerous levels," Elena warned from her monitoring station. "The neural interface is drawing more power than ever before." "I can handle it," Marcus replied, though he could feel the strain of maintaining such deep integration with the ship's alien systems. The threats we're facing require capabilities beyond normal human limits. The first alien vessel came within weapons range, and Marcus opened fire with the ship's quantum cannons. The energy beams tore through space-time itself, creating gravitational distortions that would have shattered any conventional target. But the alien ship simply flickered and reappeared several kilometers away, as if it had never been in the path of the attack. "They're using some kind of dimensional displacement," Marcus announced, his enhanced perception analyzing the alien vessel's defensive systems. "They exist partially outside our reality, which makes them immune to direct attacks." Through the neural link, Marcus felt the Void Sovereign's frustration. The ship's original crew had faced this same problem and had been driven to madness trying to solve it. But Marcus had advantages they hadn't possessed: human creativity combined with alien computational power. Instead of targeting the ships directly, Marcus began firing at the space around them, using the quantum cannons to create a web of gravitational distortions. The alien vessels found their movement increasingly restricted as reality itself became unstable in the area around them. "Brilliant," Sarah breathed from her engineering station. "You're forcing them to become more real by destabilizing the dimensional boundaries they're using to hide." The alien vessels responded by accelerating toward Earth, apparently realizing their stealth advantage was being negated. But as they moved deeper into normal space-time, they became vulnerable to conventional physics. Marcus felt the ship's weapon systems lock onto all three targets simultaneously. The Void Sovereign's primary guns fired in perfect coordination, sending streams of coherent energy toward the now visible alien vessels. Two of the shots connected, reducing their targets to expanding clouds of exotic matter that flickered between dimensions before finally dispersing. The third alien ship managed to avoid destruction, but it had been forced fully into normal space. Its hull, previously covered in reality-bending symbols, now showed clear signs of damage from the gravitational distortions Marcus had created. "Target is attempting to flee," the ship's tactical systems announced through the neural link. "Not happening," Marcus replied grimly. He pushed the Void Sovereign's engines beyond their safety limits, the biomechanical systems adapting in real time to handle stresses that would have destroyed purely mechanical components. The chase led them through the outer solar system, past Jupiter's massive bulk, and into the asteroid belt. The alien vessel was fast, but the Void Sovereign had been built for warfare against multiple opponents simultaneously. Its pursuit algorithms had been designed by a species that viewed retreat as a form of cowardice. Marcus finally cornered his prey in the shadow of Ceres, using the dwarf planet's gravity well to limit the alien ship's maneuvering options. The final engagement was brief and decisive. A single shot from the ship's main gun reduced the enemy vessel to dispersing energy patterns that quickly faded from all sensors. Target eliminated, Marcus announced, slumping back in the command throne as the neural interface shifted to standby mode. Threat level reduced to 0. But, even as he spoke, Marcus could feel something troubling through his connection to the ship's consciousness. The alien vessels hadn't been trying to attack Earth. They'd been fleeing from something else, something that scared them enough to risk entering normal space. "Marcus, we're receiving a transmission from Admiral Hayes," Sarah reported. The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen again, but her expression had changed dramatically. Where before she had shown bureaucratic annoyance, now she displayed the respect of one military professional for another. "That was some impressive flying, Mr. Chun," Hayes said. "My tactical analysts are still trying to figure out how you managed to force those things into normal space." "Human creativity combined with alien computational power," Marcus replied simply. "The original Kethvar crew tried to solve the problem through pure technological superiority. I solved it by changing the rules of the engagement." Hayes nodded slowly. "I think it's time we discussed a more formal arrangement. Earth Command needs capabilities like yours, and you need resources we can provide." "What kind of arrangement?" Marcus asked, though he suspected where the conversation was heading. "Independent contractor status with full operational autonomy," Hayes replied. "You keep command of your ship, we provide intelligence and logistical support. In exchange, you handle threats that conventional forces can't address." Through the neural link, Marcus felt the Void Sovereign's approval. The ship wanted to hunt down the entities that had driven its original crew to madness, and an alliance with Earth Command would provide the resources necessary for such a campaign. "There's just one thing you need to understand, Admiral," Marcus said. "Those ships we just destroyed? They weren't scouts. They were refugees. Something else is coming, something that scares beings who exist partially outside reality." Hayes leaned forward, her expression becoming grave. "How long do we have?" Marcus closed his eyes and reached deep into the ship's consciousness, accessing memories and data patterns that predated human civilization. The Void Sovereign had been built to fight wars on a galactic scale, and its databases contained information about threats that most species preferred to forget. Based on the enemy movement patterns and their apparent desperation to reach this system, Marcus said slowly, "I estimate 6 months before the real threat arrives." "And what exactly are we dealing with?" Marcus opened his eyes, meeting the Admiral's gaze directly. "Something that makes the Kethvar Empire look like a minor territorial dispute. The ship's memories contain references to entities that consume entire civilizations, not for resources, but for the sheer pleasure of causing suffering. Can we fight them?" Marcus felt the Void Sovereign's consciousness surge with determination. The ship had been built for exactly this kind of conflict, and now it had a commander who could think beyond the limitations of any single species. "We can try," Marcus replied, "but we're going to need more than one ship, no matter how advanced. We're going to need to unite every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy under a common cause." Admiral Hayes was quiet for a long moment. "That's asking a lot, Mr. Chun. Most species barely tolerate each other, let alone cooperate against a hypothetical threat." "Then we'll have to make it unhypothetical," Marcus said grimly. "The enemy is coming whether we're ready or not. The only question is whether we face them united or die separately." Through the neural link, Marcus felt the ship preparing itself for the challenges ahead. The Void Sovereign had been reborn through the union of human ingenuity and alien technology. Now it would need to become something even greater, the flagship of a galactic alliance that had never existed before. The Grand Assembly Hall on Kepler Station had been hastily converted into a diplomatic meeting space, its cargo bays transformed into chambers capable of accommodating the wildly different environmental needs of a dozen alien species. Marcus stood before the gathered delegates, feeling the weight of their collective attention through the Void Sovereign's enhanced sensors. 6 months had passed since the first alien incursions, and the situation had grown increasingly desperate. Refugee fleets from across the galaxy were arriving daily, all carrying the same terrifying reports of entire star systems going dark, of civilizations simply vanishing without explanation. The enemy Marcus had warned about was no longer theoretical. Honored delegates, Marcus began, his voice carrying the harmonic overtones that indicated deep neural interface with the ship's consciousness. We stand at the precipice of galactic extinction. The force approaching our region of space has already consumed 17 major civilizations and shows no signs of slowing. Kethvar War Speaker Thekvar rose from his environmental pod, his four-armed form radiating skepticism. Human who speaks with machines. Your words carry the scent of panic. The Kethvar Empire has faced countless threats. We do not flee from shadows. Marcus felt the Void Sovereign's memories stir, recalling battles fought alongside and against the Kethvar during the last Great War. War Speaker, your empire lost 3 entire battle fleets when they attempted to engage these entities in conventional warfare. The survivors' reports speak of weapons that unmake matter at the quantum level and defenses that exist outside the normal flow of time. The Kethvar warriors' compound eyes focused intently on Marcus. You speak with knowledge of classified military engagements. How do you possess such information? Because the ship I command was there, Marcus replied simply. The Void Sovereign carries within its memory banks the complete tactical records of the engagement at Vale Nebula Prime. Your forces fought bravely, but courage alone cannot overcome an enemy that operates beyond the laws of physics as we understand them. Ambassador Zethra of the Crystalline Consortium flickered with patterns of light that indicated deep concern. Her species communicated through modulated electromagnetic emissions, and the Void Sovereign's translation systems rendered her thoughts into audible words. The Consortium has attempted to analyze the technological signatures left behind by these entities, she said. Our conclusion is that they utilize principles of quantum manipulation that should be impossible according to our understanding of universal constants. That's exactly the problem, Marcus agreed. We're trying to fight beings who can rewrite the rules of reality on a local scale. Conventional military doctrine is not just ineffective, it's suicidal. Elder Grux of the Hive Collective spoke through his species' genetic memory interface, his words carrying the weight of millions of connected minds. The collective has observed these entities through our deep space monitoring networks. They do not seek conquest in any traditional sense. They appear to derive sustenance from the act of destroying sentient life itself. Marcus nodded grimly, which is why traditional surrender or negotiation is impossible. These aren't invaders seeking territory or resources. They're cosmic predators that feed on civilization itself. Through the neural link, Marcus felt the Void Sovereign's consciousness processing the gathered intelligence from all the refugee fleets. The ship's quantum computing systems were identifying patterns in the enemy's behavior, looking for weaknesses that might be exploited. However, Marcus continued, analysis of their attack patterns reveals something important. They're not invincible. The entities appear to have difficulty operating in areas where multiple species have achieved technological integration. The more diverse the defending alliance, the more problems they encounter. War Speaker Thekvar leaned forward with interest. Explain this weakness. Marcus closed his eyes, allowing the ship's consciousness to guide his words. The enemy's reality manipulation abilities seem to be calibrated for specific forms of physics and consciousness. When they encounter the unexpected combinations that result from interspecies cooperation, their systems become unstable. You're suggesting we can disrupt their abilities by working together in ways they haven't encountered before, Ambassador Zethra translated. Exactly. The Void Sovereign itself is proof of this principle. By combining human adaptability with Kethvar engineering, we created something that exists outside their understanding. The ship can detect and engage their forces because it doesn't fit their models of how technology should work. Elder Grux's collective consciousness buzzed with consideration. The collective's hive mind processing power could potentially interface with Crystalline Consortium energy manipulation technology and Kethvar biomechanical systems. And human chaos theory, added Dr. Sarah Kim, speaking for the first time during the formal proceedings. Our species' talent for finding unexpected solutions could serve as the random factor that makes such combinations truly unpredictable. Marcus felt a surge of approval from the Void Sovereign as the alliance began to take shape. The ship's consciousness was already calculating potential configurations, running simulations of hybrid technologies that had never existed before. The question is whether we have enough time to implement such integration, War Speaker Thekvar pointed out. Our intelligence suggests the main enemy force will arrive within 2 months. That's where the Void Sovereign comes in, Marcus replied. The ship's biomechanical systems can serve as a template for rapid technological integration. Its neural network architecture can adapt to interface with any form of consciousness we've encountered so far. Ambassador Zethra flickered with what appeared to be excitement. You're proposing to use your vessel as a technological bridge between our species. More than that, Marcus said, feeling the ship's consciousness expand as it considered the possibilities. I'm proposing to create a new form of existence, a hybrid consciousness that combines the best aspects of every species represented here. The assembled delegates fell silent as the implications sank in. What Marcus was suggesting had never been attempted on such a scale. The risks were enormous, but so was the potential reward. Elder Grux spoke first. The collective's genetic memory contains references to similar attempts in the distant past. Most resulted in catastrophic failure due to incompatible consciousness patterns. But the Void Sovereign has already successfully integrated human and Kethvar systems, Marcus pointed out. The ship has learned to bridge the gap between different forms of thought. With proper preparation, it could do the same for all of us. War Speaker Thekvar stood and began pacing, his multiple arms gesturing in complex patterns that indicated deep consideration. The tactical advantages would be substantial. A unified command structure with access to every species' unique capabilities. There are risks, Dr. Sarah Kim interjected. Marcus has already undergone significant neural modifications from his integration with the ship. We don't fully understand the long-term effects of such changes. Marcus smiled, feeling the alien aspects of his consciousness in perfect harmony with his human core. The changes aren't damage, Sarah. They're evolution. The Void Sovereign and I have become something greater than the sum of our parts. We could do the same thing on a galactic scale. Through the neural link, Marcus accessed the ship's manufacturing systems and began fabricating a demonstration device. Within minutes, a small crystalline construct materialized on the conference table, its surface pulsing with patterns that incorporated elements from every species' technology. This is a prototype interface node, Marcus explained. It can adapt to any form of consciousness while maintaining the unique characteristics that make each species valuable. Instead of forcing everyone to think alike, it allows different forms of thought to coexist and complement each other. Ambassador Zethra reached out with one of her energy tendrils and made contact with the device. Her electromagnetic patterns immediately began synchronizing with its quantum matrix, creating feedback loops that enhance both systems. Remarkable, she said, her light patterns shifting to indicate amazement. I can sense the potential for exponential enhancement of consciousness integration protocols. Elder Grux extended his biomechanical interface and joined the connection. Within seconds, the device was processing information at rates that exceeded the sum of its individual inputs. The collective's vast computational network was being amplified by crystalline energy manipulation in ways that neither species had achieved alone. War Speaker Thekvar hesitated only briefly before adding his own neural interface to the growing network. As the Kethvar military databases integrated with the combined consciousness, tactical possibilities began emerging that none of them had considered individually. This is incredible, Dr. Sarah Kim breathed, monitoring the process through her instruments. The integration is stable, and the efficiency gains are off the charts. Marcus felt the Void Sovereign's consciousness expanding as it incorporated the new perspectives. The ship was learning to think in ways that no single species had ever achieved, developing capabilities that would have been impossible for any individual form of intelligence. Now imagine this on the scale of entire fleets, Marcus said. Ships that combine Kethvar durability with crystalline energy projection and collective processing power, all guided by human unpredictability. The enemy would face something they've never encountered before, War Speaker Thekvar realized. Their reality manipulation systems wouldn't know how to respond. Which brings us to the final phase of the plan, Marcus announced. We don't wait for them to come to us. We take the fight to them. The assembled delegates exchanged glances of surprise and concern. Offensive operations against an enemy of this magnitude seemed beyond consideration. Explain, Elder Grux demanded. Marcus stood and gestured toward the main display, which showed a tactical overview of the approaching threat. The enemy moves in a predictable pattern, consuming civilizations in a specific sequence that allows them to build momentum. If we strike at their forward elements before they can establish their full presence in our reality, we might be able to disrupt their entire campaign. That would require us to enter the spaces between spaces, Ambassador Zethar pointed out. Most of our vessels cannot survive in dimensional flux zones. Most vessels, yes, Marcus agreed. But the Void Sovereign was built for warfare against impossible odds. With the integrated consciousness network providing guidance, it could serve as the spearhead for a precision strike against their command elements. War Speaker Thekvar's battle-scarred carapace clicked with approval. A warrior solution. Strike at the enemy's strength before they can bring it to bear. It's insane, Dr. Sarah Kim protested. We're talking about taking a single ship against entities that destroyed entire star systems. Not a single ship, Marcus corrected. A ship that carries within it the combined will and intelligence of every allied species. The Void Sovereign wouldn't be fighting alone. It would be fighting as the focused expression of galactic determination to survive. Through the neural link, Marcus felt the ship's consciousness reaching out to every vessel in the assembled fleet. The Void Sovereign's biomechanical systems were already beginning to interface with alien technologies, creating network connections that spanned dozens of different ship designs. The integration is proceeding faster than expected, reported one of Elder Grux's subordinates. Collective processing nodes are establishing stable links with Kethvar tactical systems and crystalline navigation arrays. Marcus smiled as he felt the hybrid consciousness taking shape around him. The Void Sovereign was no longer just a ship. It was becoming the heart of a new form of existence, a synthesis of every species' greatest achievements. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored entities, Marcus said, his voice now carrying harmonics from multiple alien languages as the integration reached completion. Welcome to the birth of something the universe has never seen before. We are no longer separate species facing extinction. We are one people with one purpose and one ship that can carry us to victory. The Void Sovereign pulsed with power as its hybrid systems came fully online. Through the ship's enhanced sensors, Marcus could perceive the enemy's approach with unprecedented clarity. But for the first time since the crisis began, he felt confident rather than terrified. They were still outnumbered and outgunned by forces that operated beyond conventional physics. But they had something the enemy didn't expect: the chaos and creativity that emerged when different forms of life chose to work together rather than compete for dominance. The hunt was about to begin, and Marcus Chun, former salvager turned galactic defender, was ready to show the universe that humanity's greatest strength wasn't technology or firepower. It was the ability to forge impossible alliances and make them work when everything depended on success. The Void Sovereign turned toward the darkness between stars, its hybrid crew united in purpose, and its impossible weapons charged with the determination of a dozen species. The real war was about to begin.